Miami and Georgia Tech in an ACC matchup this weekend. Miami coming off what was a pretty thriller of a game against Duke last week. Georgia Tech, it has been a very tough out for a lot of opponents this year. Joe, how do you see this one going, Miami versus Georgia Tech?
Well, of course, got to start this off by saying I do not think that this is going to be a spot where Miami's going to get upset. I don't think that's a hot take. Folks on this channel know that I have been a supporter of Miami to this point. This Georgia Tech situation offensively is a bit complicated because the health situation for Haynes King is a little bit unclear. It sounds like Mario Cristobal was talking about him early on this week heading into the game. It sounds like he might be available. The degree of health we're unsure just because of how very limited information that we get in these injury reports from college programs. His availability, Blake, is super important for this game. We have seen him keep Georgia Tech in games close that they maybe shouldn't have been. If they want to have a shot at winning this football game, they need Haynes King because he could have a similar impact to what Malik Murphy did this past week. Outside all of that, I continue to stick with Miami because of how potent they've been offensively, how easy they're able to completely shift the momentum in football games. So if they maybe start slow like we've seen them do multiple games this year, they're going to pick things right back up where they need to win the football game.
The only problem that I have in you saying that is that Georgia Tech actually is the best statistical defense that they've faced all year. They're 27th in the country in total defense. Joe, you look at what they've been able to do defensively in the run game. I agree with you. This falls more on the hands of Haynes King for it to be a competitive game. But look, as much as I've come down on Miami the last couple of weeks, I want to make it very well known yet here again. I think they can outscore any team. I think they're that potent and that good offensively. The bottom line is starting to become with Miami is if your offense has an off day, which I do think Georgia Tech can present some interesting things for you. Again, they're top 27 in defense. I mean, it's not like that they've been bad. They've been – Joe, we knew this going into week 0. What do they do well? They tackle well in space. They cover well. They're really good in their front seven. They're very physical. This, to your point, I don't think this is the game that they have like mistakes and mess ups, but you can't let them hang around with you like you've let other teams. You know, Miami fans came after me a couple of weeks ago saying we just bludgeoned Florida State. I'm not talking about Florida State again this year. It's just not happening. But against the teams that remotely have any somewhat of a pulse, how do you play against them? Joe, I don't want to hear about you dominating Florida State. What I want to see is that I know and think that you're good enough to dominate an opponent. You got to stop getting lost in man-to-man coverage. I mean, like, Joe, if you can't get lined up in man-to-man coverage and know where you need to go, it's not a coach issue. You've had 2 different position coaches now in your secondary in back-to-back years. It's a player issue. Again, I need to start seeing them play to their potential. You can say whatever you want about, well, their schedule and this. And the bottom line remains, and it's going to continue to remain. If you continue to allow teams to stay around with you, eventually you might not get lucky. I mean, Joe, let's just be real here. If you're a Virginia Tech Hail Mary play away from not being from your record not being flawless. So again, I'll say that it's like, so people in the chat last night or people in the show last night, let's not forget that. Like, you think I'm coming out with something absolutely ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. But to your point, if Haynes King does play, he does present one big difference, health-wise or not. He can run. We've seen that he's limited turnovers. Joe, he accumulated 39 touchdowns last year. It's not like the kid cannot play. So I think it comes down to Haynes King in this one too. But I think that, look, regardless of what happens, Georgia Tech's is not going to be able to keep up offensively in the point scoring.
I don't want to rehash the old argument that we've had like 5 times now. I'm just going to reiterate. I didn't.
You lost it every time.
I don't think that it's a player issue. They have young players in their secondary. OJ Frederick Jr., who had a big pick either last game or the game prior.
How else did you get lost in man coverage?
You said it was a player issue. They're young players. They're not bad football players. They're young football players in their secondary.
Okay, how do you get lost? So they've never played man coverage a day in their life? It's a number.
No, they're inexperienced. It's inexperienced. Blake, come on. They're not bad football players. You've got young guys that are stepping up, and they're making big plays. They're just inconsistent because they're young football players. So I'm not going to say it's a problem.
Lost.
I don't want to rehash that. I agree it's not, but I don't want to rehash that argument because we're just going to waste 15 minutes yelling about it because we keep having the same argument over and over again. We're never going to agree on it. One thing that does stand out to me for this, Miami's defense, they are this season 12th in they're 12th in rush defense EPA for expected points added. I think that Georgia Tech has been very reliant this year on any of their offensive success in running the football. Jamal Haynes has been super productive for them, and when Haynes King is in the fold, he has helped elevate that rushing attack. But albeit the problems that they're having in their passing game, which I will not deny are occurring, they do not have that explosive receiving group that's going to like really, really stress Miami's defense. Could they get big plays like we saw Duke did? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, they're not built for the shootout that they could get into with Miami if this thing does end up getting close.
Joe, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to push back on you on one thing. I also thought Duke wasn't either.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up. Like, there's still a possibility for it to happen.
That's the part where I'm coming at. Like, we can say that Georgia Tech, or we can continue to say these teams against Miami don't have X, Y, and Z. And the truth is, you're right, they don't. But the reality of how the outcomes of these games have been going is, Joe, Duke was 109th coming into this game last week in passing. 109th. Like, it's not as if that they were lighting things up. They were actually also 109th in the country in total offense. They have enough playmakers than what Duke did. I mean, they simply do.
But that doesn't.
Hold on. Their running game is more efficient than what Duke's was. Again, Joe, they're 75 points higher. So I'm with you on saying that on paper, you're right. They don't have the explosiveness on paper to do it. However, neither did Duke. Neither did Cal. Neither did Virginia Tech. And again, I'm picking Miami to win here. For what it's all said and done, I'm picking them to win. There's just going to come a point where, okay, Joe, we forget with 8 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, Duke led. It was impressive what Cam Ward did.
But the final score ended up them losing by 20.
I don't care about that. Because
that's important. They won by 20. That's an important thing to care about.
The point that I'm trying to make, Joe, there's going to be a time. All right, well, this is the best defense that you've seen. Are you going to score 21 points in 4 minutes? I don't think Georgia Tech's going to let you do that. So, again, it comes to a part where when I'm looking at a defense that's 27th in the country in total defense, you can do that against Duke. You might not be able to do that completely against Georgia Tech because, Joe, it's not as if that Tech, who, by the way, has only given up 30 points once this year. Now they're going to do it at Miami. It's not as if that they're pushovers defensively now.
But, Blake, Georgia Tech hasn't seen an offense anywhere near this good, so we're going to need to be acknowledged that's a big piece of this game. But hold on. Let me finish what I'm trying to say here. If and when Miami loses, it has to be against a team that has a very explosive offense. They're not going to lose a game in the regular season. They're not going to. We have seen upsets happen so far this year across college football because teams' weaknesses were heightened by matchups against teams that had strengths that were not cohesive for a productive football game. Miami is not going to see anybody in the ACC. It's not going to be Clemson. It's not going to be SMU that can put up the points in bunches to go shot for shot with Miami. That's my whole talking point that I've had with them every single week is that they are too explosive in short spurts that no lead is safe. That's why they keep winning. They're not going to see a matchup like that until they get to the playoff. They're not going to see it in the ACC. They're not going to see it for this final stretch of the year.
Okay. I mean, I'm with you on paper, but they continue to Joe, they're finding new ways to allow teams to stick around. You can't deny that.
They're also finding new ways to
no,
score
they're not.
And win.
No, they're not. Joe, it's called Restrepo. When they need something, they're going to Restrepo. Am I lying? No, that's what they did.
No, you're not. But every play that Cam Ward and this offense makes, the big plays they have, there's a new highlight that they put out there that we've never seen
just
before.
Because it's a new highlight in a new game doesn't mean that the philosophy of who's executing the plays are changing.
Okay.
This is how Miami games go. They start out sluggish. A team that has no business taking a lead on them does. Then they wake up and then they come all the way back. It's what's happened in 5 of the last 6 games.
It's working.
No, no.
I keep coming back to literally Washington this last year.
They're not Washington. Sorry, they're not.
How are they not Washington? I'm not rehashing that argument again.
Because your unwillingness in 3 straight years to pick out a team like Miami to say that this is not a massive issue. It's a massive issue.
Blake, it's an issue, just like all the commenters are pointing out that they acknowledge it's an issue. I'm willing to pick a team that follows this trend because it's successful. There's always one team every single year that can do it. There's never more than one. There's not. Whoever has the best offense.
So they're 132nd out of 133 teams and giving up explosive plays. At some point, regardless of where it is,
but you keep saying it, and we don't know when that point. Okay, we're wasting time on the same argument that we keep having.
You're just wrong.
I'm not
wrong. Oh well, you've been the last 2 years. You're going to eventually be wrong. I promise you. All right.
But both those teams made it to the national championship game. That's not being wrong. Go ahead. Let's go to the next one.
No, TCU lost against Kansas State because they allowed the same thing in a Big 12 title game.
Still went to the national championship.
They had no business being there. They should have never been in the playoff. TCU was sucked. They got beat by 60. Remember when you picked TCU to beat Georgia? Remember when you picked TCU to beat Georgia?
That was a mistake.
Do you remember that?
No. Don't sit here and point that out. I was still correct. I was still correct in that both of those teams. I was still correct in saying that both of those teams were good enough to reach the national championship game. Those weren't wrong takes.
All right, you keep doing it. You're going to get clipped.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.